How can a billionaire CEO run a global empire but can't see the genius mopping her floors? What happens when a powerful woman who judges everyone by their position discovers that the janitor she humiliated speaks 7 languages fluently? In today's story, we'll witness how Victoria Blackstone, a billionaire CEO, learns the most valuable lesson of her life from the most unexpected teacher, a single dad working the night shift. This incredible tale will challenge everything you think you know about success, dignity, and hidden potential. Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published new stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. The fluorescent lights of Global Tech headquarters hummed their familiar tune as Marcus Thompson pushed his cleaning cart through the marble lobby. At 47, his strong shoulders carried more than just the weight of industrial cleaning supplies, they carried the invisible burden of a life reimagined. Evening, Marcus, the security guard Jake barely glanced up from his phone. Don't forget, the executive floor needs extra attention tonight. Big shots coming tomorrow. Marcus nodded silently, his deep brown eyes reflecting a wisdom that went unnoticed. In this building of glass and steel, he had perfected the art of being invisible, a ghost who cleaned up after the living. The elevator ride to the 40th floor was his moment of solitude. Marcus closed his eyes, and for just a second, he wasn't in a janitor's uniform. He was back at the United Nations, his voice bridging gaps between nations, his words preventing conflicts. But that was before Clara got sick. Before medical bills consumed their savings. Before a drunk driver took her away and left him with a daughter who needed him more than any career ever could. The elevator dinged, pulling him back to reality. As the doors opened, a whirlwind of expensive perfume and sharp commands burst past him. I don't care what time zone Tokyo is in. Victoria Blackstone's voice cut through the air like a blade. The CEO of Global Tech didn't just walk, she conquered space. Her silver Louboutins clicked against the floor with military precision, her perfectly styled blonde hair never moving despite her rapid pace. The merger documents need to be translated tonight. Do you understand the catastrophe we're facing if those Chinese investors don't hear what they want tomorrow? Her assistant, a young woman named Sarah, struggled to keep up while juggling an iPad, 2 phones, and a stack of folders. Ms. Blackstone, the translator confirmed for 9 a.m. sharp. Everything's arranged. Confirmed means nothing. Victoria spun around, causing Sarah to nearly collide with her. Last month, confirmed meant our German translator showed up drunk. The month before, confirmed meant our Arabic specialist forgot the difference between classical and modern Arabic. I want backup. I want options. I want. Her icy blue eyes landed on Marcus, who had pressed himself against the wall to let them pass. For a moment, their gazes met. Marcus saw something in those eyes, fear disguised as anger, pressure masquerading as power. But Victoria saw nothing. Her gaze passed through him as if he were part of the wallpaper. And make sure the janitorial staff knows to stay clear of the boardroom tomorrow, she added, already dismissing his existence. We can't have any distractions. As the CEO's hurricane passed, Marcus quietly wheeled his cart to the executive conference room. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sparkled below, millions of lights, millions of stories, millions of people judging books by their covers. He began his methodical cleaning, each movement practiced and efficient. As he polished the massive mahogany table, his fingers traced the grain of the wood. Tomorrow, deals worth billions would be discussed across this surface. Words in Mandarin would determine fates. Nuances in translation could make or break empires. Marcus smiled sadly to himself. If only they knew that their janitor had once translated for presidents and prime ministers. If only they knew that he spoke Mandarin, Cantonese, Japanese, Arabic, French, Russian, and Spanish with the fluency of a native. If only they knew that he had given it all up for something more precious than any corporate merger. His phone buzzed, a text from Mrs. Rodriguez, his neighbor, Jasmine ate dinner and finished homework. She asked if you could help with her Mandarin practice when you get home. Marcus's smile became genuine. His 16-year-old daughter was following in his linguistic footsteps, though her autism made traditional schooling challenging. She thrived in languages, finding comfort in their patterns and logic when the social world seemed too chaotic. As he emptied the waste baskets, Marcus noticed discarded drafts of tomorrow's presentation. His trained eye caught 3 translation errors in the executive summary alone, errors that could offend the Chinese delegation before negotiations even began. He paused, considering whether to leave a note. But who would believe a janitor understood international business protocols? He continued cleaning in silence, the invisible man in the Tower of Ambition, carrying secrets that could change everything, if anyone bothered to see him. Dawn broke over Global Tech headquarters with the kind of pristine clarity that seemed to mock the chaos about to unfold. Victoria Blackstone had been in her office since 5 a.m., her third cup of black coffee growing cold as she reviewed the merger documents one final time. This deal with Chen Industries would establish Global Tech as the dominant force in the Asian market, a goal she had pursued relentlessly for 3 years. Her phone rang. The name on the screen made her blood run cold. David Kim, her lead translator. Ms. Blackstone, his voice was barely a whisper, I'm at the hospital. My wife, car accident. I can't, you're joking. Victoria's voice was deadly calm, the kind of calm that preceded storms. Please tell me you're joking. I'm so sorry. She's in surgery. I can send you some names of other translators. Victoria hung up. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down the phone. Through her office windows, she could see the sunrise painting the city gold, but all she saw was disaster. Sarah. Her voice echoed through the executive floor. Sarah burst through the door, already sensing catastrophe. Ms. Blackstone. Kim's not coming. Family emergency. Victoria stood, pacing like a caged predator. The Chen delegation arrives in 3 hours. 3 hours. Do you understand what this means? Sarah's face paled. I'll call the backup translators immediately. Every competent Mandarin translator in the city is already booked or working for our competitors, Victoria said through gritted teeth. But call them anyway. Offer triple rates. Offer whatever it takes. As Sarah scrambled to make calls, Victoria's phone buzzed with a text from Building Security, Chen Industries delegation arriving early. ETA 30 minutes. No, no, no. Victoria slammed her palm on the desk. The universe seemed determined to destroy everything she had built. Sarah. They're early. Tom from legal burst in. Victoria, I heard about Kim. Maybe we should postpone. Victoria's laugh was bitter. Do you know how Chinese business culture views postponement? It's weakness. It's disrespect. It's corporate suicide. Board member Richard Hammond appeared in the doorway, his usually confident demeanor shaken. Victoria, the investors are asking about meeting preparations. What should I tell them? Tell them everything's under control, Victoria lied smoothly. Sarah, any luck? I've reached 2 translators. One can be here in an hour, but he specializes in simplified Chinese, not traditional. The other says she can do it but warns her Mandarin is academic rather than business-focused. Victoria felt the walls closing in. All her preparation, all her work, undone by one car accident. She thought of her father, who had built this company from nothing, who had trusted her to take it global. She was not going to fail him. Bring them both, she commanded. And keep calling others. Someone in this city must speak fluent business Mandarin. 25 minutes later, the elevator chimed. Through the glass doors of the conference room, Victoria watched Mr. Chen and Ms. Lu emerge, accompanied by their entourage. Mr. Chen was exactly as she had pictured from their video calls, dignified, silver-haired, with eyes that missed nothing. Ms. Lu, his chief financial officer, carried herself with quiet authority. Victoria plastered on her most confident smile and went to greet them, Sarah trailing behind with a tablet showing basic Mandarin phrases. "Mr. Chen, Ms. Liu, welcome to Global Tech," Victoria said, bowing slightly. Mr. Chen's expression remained neutral as he responded in rapid Mandarin. Victoria's smile froze. She glanced at Sarah, who was frantically typing into a translation app. "He says, he's pleased to, no wait, honored to," Sarah stammered. Ms. Liu spoke up in accented but clear English. "Mr. Chen prefers to conduct initial negotiations in Mandarin. It is our custom. I trust this was communicated." Of course, Victoria lied again, feeling sweat gather at the base of her neck despite the air conditioning. "Our translator is, briefly delayed. Perhaps we could begin with a tour of the facilities." Mr. Chen spoke again, his tone sharper. Ms. Liu translated reluctantly, "He says delays are inauspicious for new partnerships. He questions if Global Tech takes this merger seriously." Behind them, Marcus emerged from the service elevator, beginning his morning rounds. He moved silently, efficiently, invisible to the executives clustered in crisis. But his trained ear caught every word of Mr. Chen's Mandarin, including the parts Ms. Liu had diplomatically softened in translation. What Mr. Chen had actually said was far worse. He was questioning not just the merger, but Victoria's competence and respect for Chinese business culture. He was already considering walking away. Marcus continued mopping, his face betraying nothing of his understanding, even as he heard Victoria's empire beginning to crumble, one mistranslated word at a time. The Global Tech boardroom had transformed into a battlefield of desperation. 3 translators had arrived within the hour, each more inadequate than the last. Victoria watched in barely concealed horror as her empire teetered on the edge of collapse. The first translator, a nervous young man named Jeffrey, had claimed fluency in business Mandarin. Within 5 minutes, it became clear his experience was limited to ordering takeout and basic textbook phrases. When Mr. Chen asked about quarterly projections using specialized financial terminology, Jeffrey responded by asking if he wanted chicken or pork. "Get out," Victoria hissed under her breath, maintaining her smile for the delegates. "Sarah, please escort Jeffrey to the elevator." The second translator, Dr. Patricia Wong from the local university, fared slightly better. Her Mandarin was technically correct but painfully academic. She translated Mr. Chen's idiomatic expressions literally, turning his metaphorical reference to "crossing the river by feeling the stones" into a bizarre question about Global Tech's proximity to bodies of water. Ms. Liu's face showed increasing embarrassment for both sides. She whispered something to Mr. Chen, who nodded gravely. Victoria didn't need a translator to understand that look, it was the face of a man preparing to leave. "Perhaps," Dr. Wong suggested helpfully, "I could explain the linguistic complexity of modern Standard Mandarin versus regional dialects." "Thank you, Dr. Wong," Victoria interrupted, her professional mask cracking. "We appreciate your academic perspective." The third translator arrived as Dr. Wong was leaving. Robert Chen, no relation to their investor, strutted in with the confidence of a man who had vastly overestimated his abilities. He boasted of his experience in Shanghai nightclubs and his Chinese girlfriend who had taught him real Mandarin. The disaster was immediate and spectacular. Robert's street slang and inappropriate casual tone made Mr. Chen's face darken with each word. When Robert tried to compliment Mr. Chen by calling him a real OG businessman, somehow mixing English slang into his already butchered Mandarin, Ms. Liu actually gasped. Board member Patricia Anderson pulled Victoria aside. "This is becoming insulting to them. We need to consider damage control." "You think I don't know that?" Victoria snapped, then caught herself. Losing control would only make things worse. "I mean, yes, Patricia. I'm handling it." Daniel from marketing attempted to help by pulling up Google Translate on his laptop, which only deepened the cultural insult. Mr. Chen's expression had moved from disappointed to offended to something approaching disgust. All the while, Marcus worked methodically around the edges of the room. He had arrived to clean up a coffee spill and stayed to witness the unfolding catastrophe. His hands moved automatically, wiping, polishing, arranging, while his mind translated every word with the precision that had once prevented international incidents. Mr. Chen was now telling Ms. Liu that global tech clearly had no respect for Chinese partners. That Victoria Blackstone was all reputation and no substance. That they should have stayed with the Japanese consortium, who at least understood the importance of proper communication. Ms. Liu tried to soften the blow in her translation to Victoria. Mr. Chen is concerned about the communication barriers. But Marcus heard the truth. He heard Mr. Chen question whether Americans were all this arrogant, assuming everyone should speak English, treating language as an afterthought rather than the foundation of respectful business. Mr. Chen, Victoria began, her voice strained, I assure you, this is not typical of our operations. If you could give us just a moment. Robert Chen chose that moment to try redeeming himself, launching into what he thought was a colloquial joke about cultural misunderstandings. The punchline, delivered in mangled Mandarin, accidentally included a phrase that sounded remarkably similar to a grave insult about Mr. Chen's mother. The room went silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause. Mr. Chen stood abruptly. Ms. Liu followed, her face a mask of professional courtesy hiding second-hand mortification. The entire Chinese delegation began gathering their materials. Wait. Victoria's composure finally shattered completely. Please, Mr. Chen. This isn't, we didn't mean. But what could she say? That her billion-dollar company couldn't find a single competent Mandarin speaker? That she had so little respect for their partnership that she hadn't arranged proper translation backup? That she, Victoria Blackstone, winner of countless business awards, had failed at the most basic element of international relations? Marcus paused in his cleaning, watching the scene unfold. His fingers tightened on the mop handle as he wrestled with years of practiced invisibility. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine, Dad, my Mandarin teacher says my pronunciation is getting really good. Just like yours. He thought of his daughter, of the life he had chosen, of the reasons he stayed invisible. But he also thought of Mr. Chen's words, about respect, about competence, about the arrogance of assuming everyone should accommodate your language rather than meeting them in theirs. The delegation was almost at the door. Victoria stood frozen, watching 3 years of work walk away. Sarah was near tears. The board members looked like attendees at a funeral. And Marcus made a decision that would change everything. The silence in the boardroom was suffocating. Victoria Blackstone, who had never met a crisis she couldn't conquer, stood helplessly as her entire future walked toward the exit. Her eyes, desperate for any solution, landed on the one person still moving, the janitor, methodically cleaning as if the corporate world wasn't collapsing around him. You. Her voice cracked like a whip. Marcus looked up, meeting her gaze directly for the first time in 2 years of employment. You there. Janitor. Every head in the room turned. Mr. Chen paused at the door, curiosity temporarily overriding his offense. Ms. Liu raised an eyebrow at the unexpected interruption. Victoria's mind raced. She had no plan, just pure desperation dressed up as authority. These are important international guests. The least you can do is offer them some refreshments before they leave. Fetch coffee. Tea. Something. Show them we have some hospitality in this building. The words tasted bitter even as she spoke them. She was grasping at straws, using the janitor as a prop to buy a few more seconds, a few more chances to salvage the unsalvageable. Marcus stood slowly, setting down his mop with deliberate care. Of course, Ms. Blackstone. Security guard Jake, who had followed the delegation up, stepped forward. Ma'am, maintenance staff aren't supposed to interact with. I don't care about supposed to. Victoria's composure cracked completely. Do you see what's happening here? Do any of you understand what we're losing? She turned back to Marcus, her desperation morphing into displaced anger. Well, are you going to stand there, or are you going to do something useful for once? The board members shifted uncomfortably. Patricia Anderson whispered, Victoria, this isn't appropriate. Appropriate? Victoria laughed bitterly. Nothing about this disaster is appropriate. At least the cleaning staff shows up when they're supposed to. At least they do their jobs without excuses or incompetence. Marcus remained silent, his face an unreadable mask. Years of practice had taught him to absorb such moments without reaction. But inside, memories flickered, of conference rooms where his voice had carried the weight of nations, where his words had bridged impossible divides. Mr. Chen spoke sharply in Mandarin to Ms. Liu, his words cutting, so this is how American executives treat their workers. Like servants to be commanded for show. I've seen enough of global tech as values. Ms. Liu translated diplomatically, Mr. Chen is ready to leave. The kitchen is back this way, Jake said to Marcus, gesturing dismissively. Come on, I'll show you where the good china is. Can't have the janitor embarrassing us more than we already are. That broke something in the room's atmosphere. Even the board members who had remained silent looked uncomfortable. Sarah stared at her tablet, unable to watch. Daniel from marketing actually took a step back, as if distancing himself from the scene. Marcus moved toward the door, each step measured. As he passed the Chinese delegation, Mr. Chen muttered something else in Mandarin, a proverb about how you can judge a tree by how it treats its smallest branches. I understand, Marcus said quietly, almost to himself. Victoria, still spiraling in her desperation, seized on this. Oh, you understand. You understand what we're losing here. This merger represents 5,000 jobs, expansion into 12 new markets, and the future of this company. But yes, please, tell me what the janitor understands about international business. The cruelty of her words hung in the air like smog. Even Robert Chen, the incompetent translator, looked shocked. This wasn't the polished CEO from magazine covers, this was raw elitism exposed under pressure. Mr. Chen shook his head sadly, speaking one last time in Mandarin, a company that treats its foundation with such contempt will never stand tall. We were wrong to consider this partnership. Even their janitor deserves better than this woman's leadership. He turned to leave, Ms. Liu and the delegation following. The death of the merger was seconds away. Marcus reached the doorway, his hand on the frame. Inside, a war raged between the man he had chosen to be and the man he had once been. Jasmine's face flashed in his mind, her smile when he helped with homework, her need for stability, for a father who came home every night. But he also heard Clara's voice, a whisper from beyond, your gifts weren't given to be hidden, my love. Sometimes the smallest act of revelation can change everything. Security guard Jake was still talking, something about not letting maintenance staff near the good supplies, about knowing their place. Victoria was standing frozen, watching her dreams evaporate. Sarah was actively crying now. The board members were already mentally composing their statements for the shareholders. And in that doorway, between servitude and revelation, between invisibility and impact, Marcus Thompson made the choice that would shatter every assumption in the room. He turned back, his voice carrying a quiet authority that made everyone freeze. Mr. Chen, before you go, perhaps you'd like to hear what Ms. Blackstone is actually trying to say, in proper Mandarin, with the respect you deserve. The words flowed from his lips in perfect, fluent Mandarin, not just the language, but the exact dialect Mr. Chen spoke, with the subtle honorifics and business terminology that had been butchered all morning. The room went utterly, completely silent. The words that flowed from Marcus Thompson's lips were liquid silk, each Mandarin syllable perfectly pitched and culturally nuanced. The transformation was so complete, so unexpected, that for a moment, nobody moved. It was as if the laws of physics had suddenly reversed, and everyone needed time to process this new reality. Marcus began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spoken these words in halls of power. I apologize for the disrespect you've experienced this morning. Please allow me to properly convey Global Tech's sincere interest in partnership with Chin Industries, with the dignity and cultural understanding you deserve. Mr. Chen's hand, which had been reaching for the door handle, froze. He turned slowly, his eyes wide with shock that quickly sharpened into intense curiosity. Ms. Lu's mouth actually fell open, a crack in her professional facade that she quickly corrected. Mr. Chen asked, his tone a mixture of disbelief and hope. You speak Chinese? Marcus replied smoothly. Not just speak, understand. The distinction was crucial in Chinese business culture, and Mr. Chen caught it immediately. Victoria Blackstone stood frozen, her face cycling through expressions like a broken television, shock, confusion, disbelief, and something that might have been fear. Her carefully constructed world, where janitors stayed silent and invisible, was crumbling with each perfectly pronounced word. How? Sarah's whisper broke the spell. How is this possible? But Marcus wasn't finished. He addressed Mr. Chen directly, his Mandarin flowing with the kind of sophisticated vocabulary that only comes from years of high-level use. Global Tech's CEO wishes to express that this morning's failures reflect not on the company's respect for Chinese partnership, but rather on an unexpected crisis that has been poorly managed. She asks for your patience and the opportunity to discuss the merger properly, with the cultural bridge that was always intended. Security guard Jake had backed against the wall, his face pale. The same man he'd dismissed night after night, the invisible janitor he'd barely acknowledged, was speaking with more eloquence than any of the supposed experts they'd brought in. Mr. Chen stepped back into the room, his entire demeanor changed. Who are you? Marcus glanced at Victoria, whose mouth was opening and closing without sound. Marcus Thompson, he said simply. I work here. You work here as what? Ms. Lu asked in English, her curiosity overcoming protocol. Maintenance, Marcus said, switching to English but maintaining his dignified bearing. Night shift, usually. But this morning, it seems I'm needed for translation. Board member Richard Hammond found his voice first. You're telling us our janitor speaks fluent Mandarin? Among other languages, Marcus said quietly, then turned back to Mr. Chen, switching seamlessly to Mandarin again. He conveyed Global Tech's merger proposal with the kind of nuanced understanding that transformed mere words into cultural bridges. He used metaphors that resonated with Chinese business philosophy, referenced shared values that the morning's translators had missed entirely, and demonstrated a deep understanding not just of language, but of respect. Other Global Tech employees had begun gathering at the glass walls, drawn by the commotion. Carl and Betty from the night cleaning crew pressed their faces against the glass, barely believing what they were seeing. Their colleague, their friend who emptied trash and mopped floors beside them, was commanding the room like a seasoned diplomat. Mr. Chen began responding, his words flowing faster now, testing Marcus's ability. He threw in classical references, switched between simplified and traditional terminology, even included some Shanghai dialect. Marcus matched him phrase for phrase, even laughing at a particularly clever play on words that would have been impossible to catch without deep cultural knowledge. Ms. Lu murmured. Incredible. Patricia Anderson from the board whispered to Daniel, are we really watching our janitor save $1 billion merger? But it was Victoria's face that told the real story. The CEO who had moments ago commanded Marcus to fetch coffee like a servant now watched him demonstrate abilities that surpassed anyone she had ever hired. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the edge of the conference table, knuckles white with the effort of processing this impossible reversal. Ms. Blackstone, Marcus said, turning to her with the same quiet dignity he'd always carried, she just hadn't bothered to see it. Mr. Chen is willing to continue discussions, but he has concerns about Global Tech's corporate culture. He'd like to understand how a company can have such talented individuals yet fail to recognize or utilize them appropriately. The question hung in the air like an indictment. Victoria's face flushed red, then pale, then red again. For perhaps the first time in her professional life, she had no words. Tell Mr. Chen, she managed finally, her voice barely above a whisper, that Global Tech, that I am learning valuable lessons this morning about assumptions and respect. Marcus translated, but added his own cultural nuance that transformed her stumbling words into something more palatable, more aligned with Chinese concepts of face-saving and growth through humility. Mr. Chen nodded slowly, then asked another question in Mandarin. This time, it was directed at Marcus himself. How does a man with your skills come to push a mop? Marcus's answer, delivered in the same flawless Mandarin, was simple but profound. Sometimes the most important work isn't the most visible. I clean these offices so I can be home for my daughter. She needs me more than any boardroom ever could. The humanity of the response, the choice of family over prestige, resonated deeply with Mr. Chen's traditional values. He smiled, the first genuine smile of the morning. He said to Ms. Liu, loud enough for Marcus to hear, "This kind of man, this is who I want to do business with. Someone who understands what truly matters." The delegation moved back to the conference table, settling into their seats with renewed interest. But all eyes remained on Marcus, the janitor who had just revealed himself to be the most qualified person in the building. Victoria finally found her voice, though it came out strained. "Mr. Thompson. Marcus, would you please assist us with these negotiations?" It wasn't a command this time. It was a request, almost a plea. The power dynamic in the room had shifted so completely that even the air felt different. Marcus looked at the mop and bucket he'd abandoned, then at the expectant faces around the table. In that moment, he wasn't just choosing whether to help with a business meeting. He was choosing whether to step back into a world he'd left behind, whether to crack open the door he'd so carefully closed. "I'll help," he said quietly. "But we do this properly. With respect. For everyone." As he took a seat at the table, the same table he'd cleaned countless times, the morning sun broke through the clouds, flooding the boardroom with golden light. It felt like a new day, in more ways than one. The transformation of the global tech boardroom was complete. Where chaos had reigned just minutes before, there was now the focused energy of serious business being conducted properly. Marcus Thompson sat at the mahogany table he'd polished 1,000 times, but now as a participant rather than invisible maintenance. "Mr. Chen," Marcus began in Mandarin, his posture reflecting years of diplomatic training, "shall we begin with Global Tech's 5-year projection for the Asian market? I believe you'll find the numbers compelling, especially regarding our commitment to local partnership rather than mere expansion." What followed was a masterclass in international business negotiation. Marcus didn't just translate, he transformed. When Victoria presented dry statistics about market penetration, Marcus wrapped them in metaphors about planting seeds in fertile soil and building bridges that honor both shores. When CFO Patricia outlined financial projections, Marcus connected them to Chinese principles of long-term thinking and mutual prosperity. Mr. Chen leaned forward, engaged in a way he hadn't been all morning. "Your understanding goes beyond language, Mr. Thompson. You grasp the essence of what we seek, not just profit, but partnership with purpose." Marcus replied, then elaborated on Global Tech's community investment plans in ways that aligned with Chen Industries' corporate philosophy. He caught every subtle nuance in Mr. Chen's questions, reading between the lines to address unspoken concerns about American companies that extracted value without contributing to local growth. Board member Richard Hammond whispered to Patricia Anderson, "In 20 years of international business, I've never seen anything like this. He's not just translating, he's architecting a deal." Victoria, who had built her career on being the smartest person in every room, found herself relying entirely on the man she dismissed just minutes before. Each time she started to speak, she looked to Marcus first, seeking guidance on not just what to say, but how to say it. "Ms. Blackstone wishes to address your concerns about Global Tech's commitment to maintaining Chinese partnerships even during economic downturns," Marcus conveyed, though Victoria had expressed it far less elegantly. He was saving face for her even as he elevated the entire discussion. Then, just as the momentum was building, the conference room door burst open. 3 more people entered, a Japanese delegation that nobody had expected until the afternoon. Blackstone-san, the lead figure, Mr. Yamamoto, bowed slightly. "We apologize for early arrival. Our flight landed ahead of schedule. We are most interested in the three-way partnership discussion. The room froze again. If finding a Mandarin translator had been difficult, finding someone who could navigate between Chinese and Japanese business cultures simultaneously was nearly impossible. The languages were different, but more importantly, the cultural expectations often conflicted. Sarah started to stammer about finding another translator, but Marcus simply stood, bowed to precisely the correct depth for the occasion, and spoke in flawless Japanese. "Welcome, Yamamoto-sama. We are honored by your early arrival. Please, join our discussion. Chen-san and I were just reviewing the mutual benefits of the proposed partnership." If the room had been shocked before, this second revelation left them stunned. Mr. Yamamoto's typically stoic expression cracked into surprise, while Ms. Sato, his assistant, actually gasped. "You speak Japanese as well?" she asked in English, clearly knocked off balance. Marcus replied with culturally appropriate humility, just a little, even as his fluency was obvious. What happened next was unprecedented in Global Tech's boardroom history. Marcus began conducting a three-way negotiation, switching seamlessly between English, Mandarin, and Japanese, but more remarkably, navigating the cultural minefield between Chinese and Japanese business practices. When Mr. Chen made a point about market expansion using a Chinese military metaphor, Marcus translated it for Mr. Yamamoto using a Japanese concept of harmony and gradual growth, same idea, different cultural packaging. When Mr. Yamamoto expressed concern about technology sharing in terms of protecting intellectual property, Marcus conveyed it to Mr. Chen in terms of building trust through careful steps. "How?" Victoria finally asked during a brief break. "How do you know all this?" Marcus glanced at her, his expression unreadable. 15 years with the United Nations Translation Services. 7 years before that in diplomatic circles. I've translated for presidents, prime ministers, and peace negotiations. This, he gestured around the boardroom, this is actually quite civilized compared to some tables I've sat at. The board members exchanged stunned looks. They had a former UN translator cleaning their offices. The absurdity of it, the waste of it, hung in the air like an accusation. Mr. Chen and Mr. Yamamoto were now engaged in animated discussion through Marcus, finding common ground they never would have discovered without his cultural bridging. The merger wasn't just salvaged, it was evolving into something bigger, better, more substantial than anyone had envisioned. "Mr. Thompson," Ms. Liu interjected in English, "your expertise extends beyond language. You understand international finance, technology transfer protocols, regulatory frameworks. How? When you translate for high-level negotiations, you must understand what you're translating," Marcus explained simply. "I've worked on trade deals, peace accords, economic summits. You absorb the knowledge because accuracy demands comprehension." Just then, another complication arose. Mr. Tanaka from the Japanese delegation raised a concern about Middle Eastern markets, suggesting they might need Arabic language support for the full global picture. The room held its breath. Marcus didn't miss a beat. He turned to Mr. Tanaka and responded in Arabic, then translated his own words, "I can assist with Arabic documentation as well, if needed." 7 languages. Daniel from marketing gasped. "You speak 7 languages?" 8, actually, Marcus corrected quietly. "But my Russian is getting rusty." Victoria's hands were shaking now. The magnitude of what she had overlooked, what she had dismissed and demeaned, was overwhelming. This man had more qualifications than her entire translation department combined, yet he'd been cleaning her office for 2 years. The negotiation continued, with Marcus orchestrating a complex dance between 3 different corporate cultures, finding synthesis where others would have found only conflict. He was doing more than translating, he was creating a new framework for international partnership that honored all parties. Security guard Jake peered through the glass door, his face a mask of disbelief. Other employees had gathered, watching the janitor they'd ignored command the room with quiet authority. Carl from the cleaning crew had his phone out, recording the impossible scene. As the afternoon wore on, the merger transformed from a simple bilateral agreement to a revolutionary trilateral partnership that would reshape global tech's global presence. And at the center of it all sat Marcus Thompson, the invisible man who had become indispensable. While Marcus orchestrated the delicate negotiations in the boardroom, a parallel drama unfolded 3 floors down in human resources. Ellen Patterson, Global Tech's HR director, had received an urgent call from Victoria Blackstone that sent her scrambling through personnel files with trembling fingers. "Find everything on Marcus Thompson. Now. I need to know who this man really is," Victoria had demanded during the coffee break, her voice a mixture of awe and something like fear. Ellen pulled up Marcus's file, expecting perhaps a hidden degree or some overseas experience. What she found made her sink slowly into her chair. The emergency contact was for a Mrs. Rodriguez, neighbor. The employment history showed 2 years at Global Tech, exemplary attendance, no incidents. But it was the education section that made her gasp. It was completely blank except for high school diploma. "This can't be right," Ellen muttered, turning to her computer. If Marcus Thompson was who he appeared to be in that boardroom, there had to be more. She started with LinkedIn, Google, professional databases. Nothing. It was as if Marcus Thompson the janitor had materialized from thin air 2 years ago. But Ellen was nothing if not thorough. She expanded her search, trying variations of his name, cross-referencing with translation services, diplomatic circles. Then she found it. A single archived article from the United Nations News Service, dated 3 years ago. Senior translator Marcus Thompson receives Distinguished Service Award for Kosovo peace negotiations. The photo showed a younger Marcus in a suit, standing between diplomats, his face bearing the same quiet dignity she'd seen on security footage. The floodgates opened. Once she had the UN connection, everything else followed. Article after article, commendation after commendation. Marcus Thompson had been one of the most respected translators in international diplomacy. He'd worked on nuclear disarmament talks, peace treaties, trade negotiations that shaped global markets. His security clearance had been above top secret. Presidents and premiers had requested him personally. "Oh my God," Ellen whispered, clicking through image after image of Marcus in the halls of power. There he was with the Secretary General. There beside the Chinese premier. There translating for the Russian president. But then the trail went cold. 3 years ago, Marcus Thompson vanished from the international stage. No resignation announcement, no farewell, just, gone. Ellen dug deeper, using HR resources that bordered on invasive, until she found it, a small news item in the Baltimore Sun. Local woman Clara Thompson dies in drunk driving accident, leaves behind husband and special needs daughter. The pieces clicked into place with heartbreaking clarity. Ellen cross-referenced dates. Marcus's last UN appearance was 2 weeks before his wife's death. His application to Global Tech came 6 months later, for a night janitor position that would let him be home during the day for his daughter. Ellen's phone rang. "Victoria again. What did you find?" "You need to see this yourself," Ellen said, printing everything. "I'm coming up." In the elevator, Ellen thought about all the times she'd passed Marcus in the halls without a second glance. How many other employees had hidden depths they'd never bothered to discover? She entered the boardroom just as Marcus was explaining a particularly complex point about international patent law to both delegations. The contrast between the man mopping floors and the man shaping a billion-dollar deal was surreal. Victoria pulled Ellen aside, practically snatching the folder. As she read, her face went through a journey, shock, recognition, and then something that looked like shame. She passed the papers to Richard and Patricia, who read with growing amazement. "He gave up everything," Patricia whispered. "A career at the UN, international prestige, probably a 7-figure salary, to be a janitor." "To be a father," Ellen corrected quietly. "I found some additional information. His daughter Jasmine is autistic. Highly functional but needs consistency, routine, someone she trusts. After his wife died, she didn't need to finish. The picture was clear. Marcus Thompson had chosen love over ambition, family over fame, presence over prestige. Richard looked through the glass at Marcus, who was now juggling questions from both delegations while Victoria sat silent. We had one of the world's premier translators cleaning our toilets for 2 years. The security clearance alone, Daniel muttered, reading over their shoulders. Do you know how hard it is to get UN top-secret clearance? This man has been in rooms where world history was decided. The Japanese delegation was asking about South American markets now. Marcus switched to Spanish, then Portuguese, addressing concerns with the same fluid expertise. Mr. Yamamoto and Mr. Chen were both taking notes, hanging on every word from the janitor who spoke their languages better than they did. Look at this, Ellen pointed to one commendation. He prevented a war. Literally. There was a mistranslation between India and Pakistan during border negotiations that could have sparked conflict. Marcus caught it, corrected it, and saved lives. Victoria stared at the papers, then at Marcus, then back at the papers. How did we not know? How did I not see? Because you never looked, Ellen said simply, then caught herself. I mean, no, Victoria interrupted, her voice hollow. You're right. I never looked. None of us did. He was invisible because we made him invisible. Through the glass, they watched Marcus pull up something on his phone, a photo. He showed it to Mr. Chen while explaining something in Mandarin. Both men smiled, the kind of genuine warmth that transcended business. That's his daughter, Ellen said, recognizing the gesture. He's probably explaining why he works nights. Mr. Chen has grandchildren. He'd understand putting family first. The revelation rippled through the executives watching. This wasn't just about language skills or hidden talents. It was about values, choices, and the assumptions they'd all made about who mattered and who didn't. Sarah approached Ellen with her tablet. I've been researching too. Do you know what Marcus Thompson's last UN assignment was? He was lead translator for the Global Climate Accord. He spent 3 months getting 195 countries to agree on language that everyone could accept. He's literally helped save the planet. And we had him scrubbing floors, Patricia said, her voice barely audible. The door opened and Mr. Chen emerged, speaking rapidly to Ms. Liu in Mandarin. But his face was animated, excited even. Mr. Yamamoto followed, bowing to Marcus with noticeably deeper respect than before. Marcus remained seated, calm and professional, as if he hadn't just revealed himself as possibly the most qualified person to ever work at Global Tech. He glanced at his watch, a simple, inexpensive digital model, and Ellen realized he was thinking about his daughter, about the life he'd chosen over all of this. We need to make this right, Victoria said suddenly, her voice firm with newfound determination. Whatever it takes, we need to make this right. But as they watched Marcus return to facilitating discussions that would reshape Global Tech's future, Ellen wondered if they even understood what right meant anymore. They'd discovered a hidden treasure in their midst, but Marcus Thompson hadn't been hiding, he'd been exactly where he chose to be, doing exactly what mattered most to him. The question now was whether Global Tech was worthy of the gift they'd accidentally been given. The afternoon sun slanted through the boardroom windows, casting long shadows across a table where impossibilities had become reality. The Chinese-Japanese partnership discussions were reaching their crescendo when the conference room door opened once again. This time, Sarah's face was pale with a different kind of panic. Ms. Blackstone, she whispered urgently, the Saudi delegation is here. They're 3 days early. Prince Abdullah's assistant says they heard about the trilateral partnership and want to discuss including Middle Eastern markets. They're in the lobby. The blood drained from Victoria's face. Saudi business protocol was notoriously complex, and the wrong approach could offend not just a company but an entire nation. We don't have an Arabic translator. We don't have. I can help, Marcus said quietly, having overheard. The simplicity of the statement, the calm assurance, sent another ripple of amazement through the room. You speak Arabic too? Mr. Yamamoto asked in English, his usual reserve cracking. Marcus responded, then translated, "Yes, I speak Arabic. I worked extensively in Middle Eastern peace negotiations." Within minutes, the boardroom expanded to accommodate Prince Abdullah bin Rashid and his delegation. The prince, dressed in an immaculate white thobe, surveyed the room with sharp intelligence. His gaze lingered on Marcus, who had risen respectfully but not obsequiously. Marcus greeted, his pronunciation perfect, his body language reflecting deep cultural understanding. Prince Abdullah responded, his eyes showing surprise and approval. "You speak Arabic well for an American businessman." Marcus's response in Arabic was elegant and revealing, "I am not a businessman, Your Highness. I am a translator who has found himself in an unusual situation. I work here in a different capacity." The prince's curiosity was clearly piqued. As the introductions continued, Marcus navigated the delicate dance of three distinct cultural protocols, ensuring Mr. Chen and Mr. Yamamoto felt respected while according Prince Abdullah the specific honors his position required. What followed was perhaps the most complex negotiation in global tech's history. Marcus wasn't just translating between four languages now, he was weaving together different concepts of time, honor, profit, and partnership. When Prince Abdullah spoke of investment in terms of generational legacy, Marcus connected it to Mr. Chen's long-term thinking and Mr. Yamamoto's concepts of sustainable growth. "This is extraordinary," Prince Abdullah said in Arabic to his advisor, not realizing Marcus was catching every word. "Who is this man who speaks our language not just with his tongue but with his understanding?" The negotiations revealed opportunities none of them had imagined. The Saudi delegation's interest in technology transfer aligned with Japanese innovation and Chinese manufacturing capacity. Global tech sat at the center, but it was Marcus who was spinning the web that connected them all. Victoria watched in silence, her usual commanding presence reduced to that of a spectator at her own meeting. Every time she tried to contribute, she had to wait for Marcus to create the cultural context that made her words meaningful. The power dynamic had shifted so completely that board members were looking to Marcus for approval before speaking. Then came the moment that changed everything irrevocably. Prince Abdullah asked a direct question in Arabic, "Tell me truthfully, Marcus Thompson. What is your position here? You are not what you appear to be." Marcus paused, glancing at Victoria. Then he answered with the same honesty that had characterized his work, "I am a janitor, Your Highness. I clean these offices at night so I can be home during the day for my daughter, who needs me." The prince's reaction was immediate and unexpected. He stood, causing everyone else to rise as well. "A janitor?" He switched to English so all could understand. "You tell me that a man who speaks the languages of diplomacy, who understands the nuances of our cultures better than ambassadors I have known, who is facilitating a deal that will reshape global markets, this man cleans floors." The silence was deafening. Mr. Chen and Mr. Yamamoto exchanged glances, their respect for Marcus clearly deepening. In their cultures, choosing humility and family over personal glory was deeply honorable. "Your Highness," Victoria began, finding her voice at last, "I have only just discovered Mr. Thompson's capabilities myself. It has been an educational morning." "Educational?" Prince Abdullah's tone was sharp. "This is not education. This is tragedy. In my country, we have a saying, the sun does not hide behind clouds forever. But here, you have hidden the sun beneath the ground." He turned to Marcus, his next words carrying the weight of decision, "Mr. Thompson, I will make you an offer. Come work for my organization. We will triple, no, quadruple whatever global tech pays you. You will have a villa, servants, the finest schools for your daughter. You will translate for kings and shape the future of nations." The room held its breath. It was the kind of offer that came once in a lifetime, a return to the world stage, wealth beyond imagining, respect and recognition. Marcus stood still for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, showing the lock screen, a picture of a teenage girl with bright eyes and a hesitant smile, wearing a t-shirt with Chinese characters. This is Jasmine, he said simply. She's learning Mandarin. She wants to be a translator like her father. Every day at 3:30, she calls me to practice. Every evening at 6, we have dinner together. Every night at 8, I help her navigate a world that doesn't always make sense to her. Your Highness's offer is beyond generous, but my wealth is measured differently now. Prince Abdullah studied the photo, then Marcus's face. His expression softened with understanding. You are richer than I knew. A man who chooses love over gold possesses treasures that cannot be stolen. Mr. Chen nodded approvingly, adding in Mandarin, this is why I trust him. He knows what cannot be bought. Mr. Yamamoto spoke in Japanese, honor is not in the position but in the choice. The three international business leaders, Chinese, Japanese, and Saudi, stood united in their respect for a janitor who had chosen family over fortune. The irony was not lost on anyone. Marcus had just facilitated a deal worth billions while rejecting millions for himself. Victoria cleared her throat. Mr. Thompson. Marcus. I owe you an apology. And more than that, I owe you an opportunity. Not to leave global tech, but to help us become the company we should have been all along. What are you proposing? Marcus asked, his tone neutral. Stay with us. Not as a janitor, unless that's what you choose, but as our Senior Director of International Relations. Set your own hours. Work around Jasmine's schedule. Help us build bridges instead of walls. Show us how to see the invisible people who make everything possible. The room waited. 3 international delegations, a full board of directors, and a CEO who had learned humility in the span of a morning, all waiting for a janitor's decision. Marcus looked at each face around the table, then at his phone where Jasmine smiled back at him. I need to make a call, he said. My daughter gets worried if I don't check in. As he stepped to the corner of the room and dialed, speaking softly in English mixed with gentle Mandarin phrases, the power players of global business watched and learned a lesson worth more than any merger. Sometimes the most important deals aren't made in boardrooms but in the quiet choices of love over ambition, presence over prestige, and family over fortune. When Marcus returned to the table, his face calm but decisive, everyone leaned forward. The future of more than just a business deal hung in the balance. It was about the future of how global tech would value its people, all of them, visible and invisible alike. The marathon negotiation session had stretched into early evening. Against all odds, Marcus had woven together a 4-way international partnership that would revolutionize global tech's position in the global market. As the delegations prepared their final documents, the atmosphere in the boardroom had transformed from crisis to celebration, but it was a subdued celebration, marked by reflection as much as success. I believe we have reached an agreement, Mr. Chen announced in Mandarin, which Marcus translated for the room. But before we sign, I have one condition. Victoria tensed. After everything, was the deal about to fall apart? Mr. Chen continued, his eyes on Marcus, I want assurance that Global Tech will retain Mr. Thompson's services. A company that almost lost such talent through blindness might lose it again through neglect. We are investing not just in your technology, but in your ability to bridge worlds. He is that bridge. Prince Abdullah nodded firmly. I second this condition. In fact, I insist upon it. Mr. Yamamoto added in Japanese, which Marcus translated with a slight smile, a company's true value lies not in its patents but in its people. We have seen both the worst and best of global tech today. We choose to invest in the best. Victoria stood, her usual commanding presence tempered by the day's lessons. Gentlemen, I give you my word. Mr. Thompson will have whatever position he chooses at Global Tech, under whatever terms he requires. Actually, Marcus interjected quietly, I'd like to hear what you're really offering, Ms. Blackstone. Not just to me, but to all the invisible people who keep this company running. It was a challenge, delivered with calm dignity. The board members shifted uncomfortably, but Victoria met his gaze directly. You're right, she admitted. This isn't just about you. It's about how we failed to see the potential in our own people. She turned to address the room, including the global tech employees who had gathered outside the glass walls to witness history. Effective immediately, Global Tech will implement a comprehensive employee development program. We'll assess every employee, from C-suite to maintenance, for hidden skills and unrealized potential. We'll provide education support, flexible scheduling for parents, and clear advancement paths that don't require sacrificing family for career. She paused, looking directly at Marcus. As for you, I'm offering you the position of Senior Director of International Relations, reporting directly to me. Your hours will be entirely flexible around your daughter's needs. Your salary. She named a figure that made several board members gasp, will reflect your true value to this company. And you'll have full benefits, including educational support for Jasmine. Marcus remained quiet, considering. The international delegates watched with interest. This negotiation, they sensed, was as important as any merger. I have a counter-proposal, Marcus said finally. I'll accept the position, but with modifications. First, I want to continue working some night shifts with the cleaning crew. They're good people who deserve to have their voices heard in the C-suite. Second, I want hiring authority to build a truly diverse translation and cultural services department, not just languages, but people who understand the communities we serve. Third, I want Global Tech to establish a fund for employee education, starting with GED and citizenship classes for those who need them. Done, Victoria said without hesitation. I'm not finished, Marcus continued with a slight smile. Fourth, I want an on-site childcare center for all Global Tech employees, with specialists trained in neurodiversity. Fifth, I want the executive bathroom keys given to the cleaning staff. They maintain those spaces and deserve the same access as anyone else. And finally. He paused, looking around the room at faces both familiar and new. Finally, I want Global Tech to institute shadow days where executives work alongside entry-level employees once a quarter. Not observing, actually doing the work. Cleaning, security, mailroom, cafeteria. You can't value what you don't see, and you can't see what you don't experience. The audacity of the demands from a janitor to a CEO should have been shocking. Instead, the international delegates were nodding approvingly. Prince Abdullah actually applauded. In Saudi Arabia, the prince said, we have a tradition during Hajj where princes and paupers stand side by side, all equal. This man brings that wisdom to your boardroom. Richard Hammond from the board spoke up, Victoria, these proposals will cost less than what we almost lost today, Victoria interrupted. Less than what we've been losing by ignoring the potential under our own roof. Mr. Thompson prevented a catastrophe and created an opportunity worth billions. His proposals aren't costs, they're investments. Then we have a deal? Marcus asked. Victoria extended her hand. We have a deal. As they shook hands, the room erupted in applause, not just from the board and international delegates, but from the Global Tech employees pressed against the glass. Carl and Betty from the night crew were openly crying. Security guard Jake looked like he'd seen a ghost, the ghost of every assumption he'd ever made. Mr. Chen stood, commanding attention. Now we sign our partnership with confidence. We invest not just in a company, but in a philosophy, that every person has value waiting to be discovered. As the contracts were signed, sealed with handshakes across cultures and languages, Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled. Excuse me, he said to the room. It's 3:30. Without embarrassment or apology, he answered the call. Hi, sweetheart. Yes, Daddy's still at work. Something special happened today. Yes, you can practice your Mandarin. Actually, I have some native speakers here who might like to hear your progress. He held the phone toward Mr. Chen, who beamed as Jasmine's voice came through, carefully pronouncing Chinese phrases. The billionaire CEO of Chen Industries spent the next 5 minutes patiently correcting a teenager's tones while her janitor father watched with quiet pride. Prince Abdullah murmured to Ms. Liu, this is why he refused my offer. He is already the richest man in the room. As the call ended and the final details were wrapped up, Victoria found herself standing beside Marcus at the window, looking out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the dusk. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "For this morning. For the last 2 years. For not seeing you." "You saw what you expected to see," Marcus replied without rancor. "We all do, sometimes. The question is what we do when our vision clears. Will you really come back tonight? For your cleaning shift?" "Yes. I made a commitment to Carl and Betty to help with the monthly floor waxing. Besides," he smiled slightly, "someone needs to clean up after all these negotiations." Victoria laughed, perhaps the first genuine laugh she'd had in the building in years. "You know what? I think I'll stay and help. Consider it my first shadow day." As the international delegations departed with warm farewells and promises of future collaboration, Marcus Thompson prepared to return to his mop and bucket. But everything had changed. He was no longer invisible, not to global tech, not to the international business community, and most importantly, not to himself. The janitor who had saved an empire would clock in for his shift at 11 p.m., just as he always did. But tonight, he wouldn't be cleaning alone. Tonight, global tech would begin the hard work of cleaning up its culture, one assumption at a time. 6 months had passed since the day a janitor saved global tech's future. The morning sun streamed through the same boardroom windows, but everything else had changed. The executive floor buzzed with a different energy, voices in multiple languages, laughter from the break room, and the sight of executives in casual clothes preparing for their quarterly shadow day assignments. Marcus Thompson stood at the window, reviewing documents for the morning's meeting with a Romanian tech delegation. His reflection showed a man transformed, not in his essence, but in how the world saw him. The same quiet dignity remained, but now it commanded boardrooms across the globe. A voice said in Mandarin. Marcus turned to find Lin Wei, one of the night janitors, holding a folder nervously. "Could I speak with you about the education program?" "Of course, Wei. English or Mandarin?" Marcus asked warmly. "English, please. I need the practice." Wei's accent was thick but determined. "I want to apply for the business administration courses. My supervisor said you could approve." "Already done," Marcus smiled. "I signed your approval yesterday. Classes start next week." "And Wei? Your English has improved tremendously." The gratitude on Wei's face was worth more than any corporate bonus. As he left, Marcus noticed Victoria Blackstone arriving, not through the executive elevator, but through the main entrance, greeting security by name. "Morning, Marcus," she said, joining him at the window. "Ready for the Romanian delegation?" "Ready. Though I should mention, my Romanian is my weakest language. I might need backup." Victoria laughed. "I think you'll manage. By the way, did you see the quarterly reports?" She handed him a tablet showing Global Tech's performance. The numbers were staggering: 30% growth, successful expansion into 12 new markets, and employee satisfaction at an all-time high. But it was the other metrics that made Marcus smile: 200 employees enrolled in education programs, 50 promotions from entry-level to management, and 0 turnover in the maintenance department. "The board wanted me to tell you," Victoria continued, "that your integration strategies have exceeded every projection. But I think you've done something more important than boost our profits." "What's that?" "You've made us human again." The conference room began filling with the morning's participants. But this wasn't the sterile, hierarchical gathering of the past. Department heads sat next to entry-level employees. The head of the new childcare center briefed the CFO on budget needs while bouncing a toddler on her lap. 3 former janitors, now part of Marcus's translation team, prepared cultural briefing packets. Carl entered, wearing a suit that fit him perfectly, a far cry from his janitor's uniform. "Marcus, the Romanian delegation just arrived. They're asking for you specifically." Apparently, word of the UN translator who chose to be a janitor has spread internationally. Urban legend status. Marcus grinned. More like business school case study. Harvard wants to interview you next month. Before Marcus could respond, a familiar voice called out, "Dad." Jasmine Thompson walked in confidently, her Global Tech intern badge gleaming. At 17, she'd grown into her gifts, her autism no longer a barrier but a unique lens through which she saw patterns in language others missed. She'd been working with the translation team during school breaks, her particular talent for written translation already earning praise. "Hi, sweetheart. Ready to observe the Romanian meeting?" "Actually," Jasmine said, producing a folder, "Ms. Chen asked me to prepare a cultural brief. I found some interesting patterns in Romanian business communication that might help." Victoria watched the father-daughter interaction with something approaching awe. "She's remarkable, Marcus." "She always was," Marcus replied simply. "People just needed to look." The Romanian delegation entered, led by a stern-looking woman named Director Popescu. Her eyes immediately found Marcus, and she surprised everyone by addressing him in flawless Mandarin, "So you're the famous Marcus Thompson. In Romania, we have a saying, the river that flows quietly runs deepest. I believe we'll work well together." As the meeting commenced, Marcus facilitated with his usual grace, but now he was supported by a team that reflected Global Tech's transformation. Former security guard Jake, now part of the facilities management team, presented the building expansion plans. Rosa from the cleaning crew, discovered to have an MBA from her home country, handled financial projections. The Romanian delegation seemed impressed not just by the proposals but by the evident diversity and mutual respect in the room. Halfway through, Director Popescu made an unexpected request: "I'd like to hear from more of your employees. Not just executives. In Romania, we believe the health of a tree is shown in all its branches, not just the highest ones." Without hesitation, Victoria called in employees from every level. Mark from IT explained the technical infrastructure while crediting the night maintenance team for keeping servers dust-free. Sarah from marketing, who'd started as Victoria's assistant, presented global outreach strategies she developed with input from the multilingual janitorial staff who understood immigrant communities. "This is unprecedented," Director Popescu said in English. "A company where every voice matters. Where a janitor becomes a director not by abandoning his roots but by bringing them to the table." "That's Marcus's philosophy," Victoria explained. "Value isn't determined by position but by perspective. Every person here has something unique to contribute." As the meeting progressed successfully toward another international partnership, Marcus noticed someone in the hallway, a young man in a janitor's uniform, hesitantly peering through the glass. Marcus recognized the look, ambition mixed with uncertainty, potential wrapped in invisibility. He excused himself momentarily and stepped outside. "Can I help you?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm David, new on the night crew. I heard about what you did. How you went from cleaning to this. I speak 3 languages myself, but I never thought." Marcus smiled, remembering his own journey. "What languages?" "Tagalog, Hindi, and Urdu. But who needs those in corporate America, right? Global Tech does," Marcus said firmly. "We're expanding into Southeast Asian and South Asian markets. Come to my office after your shift tomorrow. Bring your resume, whatever you have. We'll talk about your future." David's eyes widened with hope, the same hope Marcus had been kindling throughout Global Tech for 6 months. Returning to the meeting, Marcus found negotiations concluding successfully. As hands were shaken and partnerships sealed, Director Popescu asked to speak privately with Marcus and Victoria. "I must tell you," she said, "we had other options. Larger companies, better offers. But we chose Global Tech because of what happened here 6 months ago. Not the miracle of finding a translator, but the miracle of transformation that followed. You've proven that competitive advantage doesn't come from hiding talent but from discovering it everywhere. As the delegation departed, the global tech team remained in the boardroom, energized by another success. Victoria called for attention. 6 months ago, this company nearly lost everything because we couldn't see the treasures in our own house. Today, we're stronger than ever because one man had the courage to reveal himself, and we had the wisdom, finally, to see him. She turned to Marcus. But more than that, you've taught us to see everyone. The night janitor studying for citizenship. The security guard with an engineering degree. The cafeteria worker who speaks 5 languages. Every invisible person who keeps this place running. Marcus stood, uncomfortable with the praise but recognizing the moment's importance. When I chose to be a janitor, I thought I was choosing invisibility. But invisibility isn't about the job you do, it's about how others choose to see you. Every person in this building has a story, skills, dreams. Global Tech's success isn't because of me. It's because we finally started seeing each other. The room erupted in applause, but it was different from 6 months ago. This wasn't the applause of shock or revelation, it was the appreciation of colleagues who had learned to value each other. As the meeting dispersed, Marcus prepared for his afternoon schedule, a video conference with the Tokyo office, lunch with the translation team, and then home by 3 o'clock to help Jasmine with her college applications. She'd decided to study international relations with a focus on neurodiversity in global communications, blazing her own trail. Victoria caught him at the elevator. Shadow day assignment for you next week. You're with the new overnight cleaning crew supervisor. Looking forward to it, Marcus said sincerely. Keeps me grounded. That's what I thought 6 months ago, that you were grounded. Now I realize you were rooted. There's a difference. As the elevator descended, Marcus thought about roots and wings, about the choice between visibility and impact, about the daughter waiting at home and the company transformed. He'd risen from janitor to director, but more importantly, he'd helped others rise with him. The brass nameplate on his office door read, Marcus Thompson, Senior Director of International Relations. But the handwritten note taped below it, placed there by the night cleaning crew, captured the truth better, the bridge builder. At 3:30, as always, his phone rang. Hi, Dad, Jasmine's voice was bright with excitement. Guess what? I got accepted into the summer interpreter program at the UN. Your old director called, she said the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Marcus smiled, looking out at the city where he'd chosen family over fame and discovered he could have both. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Tell me all about it when I get home. Oh, and Dad. Mom would be proud. Of both of us. As Marcus ended the call, he saw his reflection in the window, janitor, translator, father, director, bridge. But mostly, he saw a man who had learned that true success isn't about being seen. It's about helping others shine. The evening shift was beginning to arrive. Marcus watched them enter, the invisible army that kept Global Tech running. But they weren't invisible anymore. Not to him, not to the company, not to themselves. Every ending is a beginning. Every closed door reveals an open window. And sometimes, the mop you push through dark hallways lights the path for others to follow. Marcus Thompson had chosen love over ambition and discovered they weren't opposites, they were partners in the dance of a life well lived. And in the gleaming towers of Global Tech, where janitors became directors and CEOs learned to clean, the dance continued. The bridge builder returned to his desk, ready for the next connection, the next revelation, the next chance to show that greatness isn't about where you stand. It's about who you lift up along the way. Dear friend, what an incredible journey we've just witnessed together. Marcus Thompson's story reminds us that extraordinary talent walks among us every day, often in the most unexpected places. How many brilliant minds have we overlooked because of our assumptions? How many Marcus Thompsons clean our offices, serve our food, or pass us on the street? This story carries a powerful truth: every person deserves to be seen, heard, and valued. The janitor mopping your floors might speak 7 languages. The security guard at your building might have an engineering degree. The cashier at your local store might be supporting a family while pursuing dreams bigger than you can imagine. Let's commit to seeing beyond job titles and uniforms. Let's recognize that dignity exists in all honest work, and that choosing family over career ambition is not a step down, it's a step toward what truly matters. In a world that often measures worth by salary and status, be someone who measures it by character and compassion. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that challenge us to see the world, and each other, differently. Together, we can build bridges instead of walls, and create workplaces and communities where everyone's potential can shine. Remember, you are not invisible. Your story matters. And sometimes, the greatest success is found not in climbing the ladder, but in helping others rise.